Well, welcome to the show, Debbie. So glad to have you here on the Criminologist Podcast. As I traditionally do with my guest, I like to kick it off with asking them to briefly introduce themselves, more as a way to highlight what their professional trajectory was like. And I've got to say, Debbie, when I was looking at your bio, I thought, okay, I cannot wait to hear Dr. Goodman's bio because as we're going to unpack during the course of this podcast, you have such a, I don't know if hybrid is the right word, eclectic, fascinating, enriching um, bundle of skills and talents that appear on your sort of life's resume that I am genuinely curious myself. Tell us what experiences you collected along the way, Debbie, and welcome to the show, by the way, to tell us where you landed in this great spot in your life you're at now, doing such great deeds.
Well, thank you, Joe, for the kind words and for having me as a guest on the show. I'm a big fan of the Criminologist Podcast, and so delighted to speak with you and your viewers. So I would say professionally, I wear three hats: criminologist, professor, author. As a criminologist, I get to interact with professionals such as yourself, the podcast in the true crime space. I speak on national media platforms about high profile crimes and cases. So that's a lot of fun. In terms of being a professor, that's been my primary career. I get to work with our undergraduate and graduate students here in Florida and get them excited about contributions they'll make. And in terms of being an author, I'm just so passionate about our field and I love to research, read, and write. So I've had the opportunity to write 7 books. And in terms of how did all of this start, and I know that's a question perhaps you and I spoke about at the intro, and my students ask me through the years, how does one become, the what I become? Well, interestingly, I would tell you I wasn't 100% sure when I was in college what I wanted to do. And yes, I was thinking more along the traditional lines of being an attorney. We have a lot of attorneys and judges in the family. But something very interesting happened, Joe, when I was 19, just a couple of years ago, right? When I was an undergrad student and always a good student, always punctual. I came to class very early. So one Wednesday morning, class starts at 9. I'm sitting in the lobby area at 7:30 in the morning. And my professor came out, looking pretty startled and frantic and saw me and said, Debbie, I have an emergency. I have to leave. A class back then, Joe, was 200,
Yeah.
250 students. And he said, do you think you could teach the class for me? Well, it was right, exactly. I'm 9 and, all these students, but of course I saw there was something of urgency going. Didn't want to disappoint him. So I said, yes, professor, of course. It was on juvenile crime and delinquency. I had about an hour to prepare and it was an hour and a half class. So long story short, I taught the class, went over some cases, some theory and whatnot. And I just decided to ask the students, you know what, can you please just take out a piece of paper? Don't put your name, but maybe just a few observations. So the professor knows we went through class. So sure enough, they did that, put that in a folder, slipped it under his door. And I guess the next class day or two after class, he said, gee, do you have a minute to come to my office? I said, yes, of course. So he said, did you read these evaluations from the students? I said, no, professor, I did not. So he proceeded to go over them with me. They were very favorable, Joe. So I was delighted that at least, I didn't get booed out of the classroom. And he then proceeded to tell me, I usually don't do this, but I'd like to have you be my teaching assistant. Usually that's something that a graduate student would do, and I was still undergrad. He said, would you be interested? I said, yes, of course. So, Joe, can you imagine that one experience then
Yeah.
really led to what I would ultimately do for the next several decades? And that's when I decided I wanted to be a criminal justice professor.
What an amazing story and what an awesome illustration of in the desistance from crime literature, what we call those turning points, as you just mentioned.
Yes.
It can be one individual, one opportunity, one turning point that is going to alter that individual's criminal trajectory or pathway. And you just illustrated how I'm always preaching there's no them, there's only us. We're all sort of cut from the same cloth. But yeah, it can take just one person or one opportunity to alter that trajectory.